Have you ever wondered why your drone footage just doesn't look the same as everyone else's on YouTube? Maybe you're looking for that cinematic look, and each time you go fly your drone, you come back home only to realize that you made so many mistakes and your footage just doesn't look that good at all, and you're left wanting and wondering what you could have done better. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 easy steps that you can apply each time that you fly your drone to get you prepared and ready for capturing beautiful, professional looking cinematic footage right out of your DJI MINI 2. Let's get straight into tip number 1, planning out your location and where you're going to be filming. If you're someone that is actually trying to capture cinematic footage, then knowing your location and scouting it before you actually go and fly your drone is so important. Any good videographer or any good photographer will always know where they're shooting, will always know the things that are of interest in the area, and also start to plan in their mind the types of shots. This applies to drone flying as well. If you're someone that is trying to actually capture this, the mistake that I made early on flying my drone was that I used to just go anywhere, fly my drone somewhere, and then try to, capture this beautiful cinematic footage. And it's just not the case. You do have to have an area or a place where you can fly that's going to be appealing to look at, but also has a point of interest, a subject or something that will get the viewer's attention. And that's so important when it comes to cinematic footage. What I suggest doing is always knowing some areas around you that you can take your drone to. And if you don't, then the easiest way to find is by simply using a search engine like Google or any social media platform and search the area that you live in or a place that you may be visiting. Some of the best resources are all free to us and we generally have them at our disposal. Google's probably the easiest way to kind of plan out and look for places, but YouTube is also another really good search engine for that, to see if anyone else has created drone videos in the areas that you're looking to visit. So once you find your place of interest that you want to go drive out to, the next step is going to be really important in making sure that you are prepared for before you go ahead and waste time driving out to a place, only realize that you're not going to be able to capture the footage that you were after. So the next tip's really important for that. Tip number 2 is keep an eye out for weather warnings and things that will actually make it hard to film. Generally speaking, when you're flying a drone, you should always try not to fly in the middle of the day where the sun's so bright that it's going to completely oversaturate your image. As a beginner, you think bright day equals amazing footage. And if that's the type of footage you want to capture, it might work, but generally speaking, for cinematic looking video, you want to be filming the time the sun comes up or at sunset. These are generally the best times of the day. I've also had a lot of success filming in a little bit overcast conditions, still a little bit of sun that's breaking through, and there's clouds in the sky, but it's not really overcast dark day. You don't want to be filming in those types of days, so look out for the weather warnings. And wind is another factor. You've got to also make sure that you're prepared for wind. You want to be going out in the best conditions that you can so that you don't have too many distractions from actually focusing on the video that you're trying to capture. So look out for weather, look out for those different environmental factors, and plan the time of day that you'll be actually driving out to this location. Before we move on to the next tip, I will ask that you go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It's the best way to support the growth of my channel so that I can get out and share these types of videos with more and more people. Next, what you want to be doing is understanding what moves that you're actually going to do with your drone. Now, there are some great ways to capture different types of footage. What I would suggest doing is not overcomplicating things. If you can, go ahead and practice in an area that's close to you before going out to the place that you're trying to capture this footage at, because you don't want to be there practicing too much if you are driving far out, unless you've got the time of day to actually go and invest and sit around and capture that footage for hours and hours. If you want to get really cinematic footage, you've got to do a little bit of practice before you get out there of the moves that you're going to actually do with your drone. Now, if you're interested in some of the moves that I use, I'll link a video for you right here that will show you some really basic moves that you can go ahead and practice before you go out and try and film. So next time you're able to get that professional looking footage. By planning out what moves you're going to do with your drone, it's going to help you understand what shots that you're going to be able to get. When you do get out on site eventually to film, it's going to be a lot easier because you'll know that you'll either have written it down, which is something I recommend. Go ahead and with a pen and paper, write down 3, 4, or 5 moves that you will do, and the type of video that you'll try and capture. Make sure to practice that, write that down, and maybe keep a mental image or an actual image of that video handy for you to look at on your phone or any other mobile device. I find this works really well for me because I have a point of reference when I get out to film, and I'm not just randomly flying my drone around, zipping it from one side to the other and hoping that that footage gets captured and I can just chop it all up and put it into a nice looking video, because it's just not gonna get the results that you want. Tip number 4 is optional, but I still suggest that you definitely look at this for professional looking footage, and that's using an ND filter. When you do use an ND filter on your DJI Mini 2 or any of the DJI drones, it does add that cinematic looking footage or that cinematic effect to all of your footage. That's really, really important on a day that you've got a lot of sun coming through and the light levels are quite high around you. Adding that ND filter is just going to enhance the look of your footage at the end of the day. The ND filter will also add something called motion blur to your video. Motion blur is a natural movement that all cameras should be able to capture when you're trying to go for that really professional looking piece of video. Without this, your video will look quite grainy, and I do this in front of you because you can see that if I don't have an ND filter on, when you do shake your hand around, it kind of looks not realistic. Depending on how bright the day is, I may choose to use an ND filter or I may not. If it's a super bright day, I'll generally use something like an ND16 or an ND32. This will add a darkening lens over my image, just giving that really cinematic look to it. The ND filters that I use are from a company named Freewell. I will link them for you in the description below. Don't go anywhere just yet. Tip number 5 is probably the most important one, and you're gonna wanna know this before you go ahead and plan out your next drone flight. Tip number 5, the most simple and basic way to capture really cinematic footage. It's got to do with how you use the direction of the sun. Now, when we capture talking head videos, whether you capture videos in a studio or outdoors, the direction of light really matters and it impacts the video quality so much. If you imagine that your drone was facing directly at the sun and it's beaming down and it's a really bright day, you don't have an ND filter on it and you're facing your drone directly at that light or at the sun. Once you've got too much light coming to your video, it's basically game over at that point and you will need to start again. It's really annoying if you don't use this tip. So before you go ahead and try to capture video, understand when you get to your place of interest, where the sun is, where the subject is, whether it's a cliff, a building, know which way the sun is actually facing and try to keep the sun on either side of your video. So whether it's on the left or the right, it won't really matter as long as you are not facing directly at it. I've found the best results actually facing my drone away from the sun, because what that will do is I'll be able to kind of shield off that really harsh light when I'm filming at that time of the day. And by using an ND filter along with this method, you'll be able to get away with filming throughout the middle of the day. So to recap on today's video, plan out where you're going to be flying. You want to pick a place that's interesting but also has some scenic views that you can capture on your drone. Number 2, you want to plan out the time of day that you'll actually be filming and flying your drone. Generally speaking, you want to be flying and capturing footage around the early hours of the morning or during sunset. These are generally the best times. Number 3, write down and have an idea of the different drone shots and moves that you're going to make. Practice them if you can beforehand. Tip number 4 is optional, but I do recommend it. For really high quality professional video, use an ND filter. Tip number 5, when you are filming, check which direction light is coming from and try to keep your camera and your drone faced away from it, or keep light at either corner of your drone's image. There it is, guys, 5 really simple steps that you can take to get really professional cinematic looking video out of your drone. If you've got any questions for me, leave them in the comments section and I'll get back to you. Apart from that, I'll see you on the next video. Take care. If you did enjoy today's video, here's a video that YouTube thinks you should watch next. I'll see you over there.